Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.
Good evening and welcome to the Thursday edition of Market Mantra, in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. My name is Rajesh Lake and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Vishal Sharma.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र में आप सभी का स्वागत। प्रतिदिन की तरह आज भी हम देश और दुनिया से आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार के ताजा समाचार आप तक लाएंगे और उन पर चर्चा भी करेंगे। चर्चा के लिए कार्यक्रम में ऑनलाइन भी हमारे साथ विशेषज्ञ जुड़ेंगे। सबसे पहले हेडलाइंस के साथ हैं राजेश लेख।
Domestic indices log marginal losses. Sensex closes below the 60,900 level. Nifty settles below 18,100 points. Asian share markets decline, falling losses in the US stocks, and Brent crude prices hover around $95 per barrel.
प्रमुख घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में मामूली नुकसान दर्ज। सेंसेक्स 60,900 जबकि निफ्टी 18,100 के स्तर से नीचे हुए बंद। अमेरिकी शेयर बाजारों में गिरावट से एशियाई शेयर बाजारों का प्रदर्शन भी रहा कमजोर और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजार में ब्रेंट कच्चे तेल की कीमतें $95 के आसपास। कार्यक्रम में सबसे पहले बात शेयर बाजार की। वैश्विक शेयर बाजारों से मिले कमजोर संकेतों के बीच आज घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में भी हल्की गिरावट दर्ज हुई। सेंसेक्स 60,900 जबकि निफ्टी 18,100 के स्तर से नीचे बंद हुआ। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स 0.11% के नुकसान से 70 अंक गिरकर 60,836 पर बंद हुआ। नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी भी 0.17% गिरकर 30 अंक नीचे 18,053 पर आ गया। हालांकि व्यापक बाजार में बीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स 0.22% और स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स 0.11% की बढ़त के साथ बंद हुए।
The key domestic stock indices today witnessed marginal losses amid negative cues from global share markets. The Sensex closed below the 60,900 mark, while the Nifty settled below 18,100 level. The Sensex declined 70 points or 0.11% to close at 60,836. The Nifty also fell 30 points or 0.17% to end at 18,053. In the broader market at the BSE, the mid-cap index climbed 0.22%, while the small-cap index ended 0.11% up. In the Sensex pack, 15 companies posted gains, while 15 logged losses. SBI was the top gainer, as it added 1.9%, followed by Titan, which surged 1.4%. Hindustan Unilever added 1.2% and Bharti Airtel gained 1%. On the other hand, Tech Mahindra declined 2.7%, Power Grid fell 2.2%, NTPC slipped 1.5%, and Infosys ended 1.4% down. In sectoral indices at BSE, 10 sectors logged gains while 9 logged losses. Realty sector climbed 0.6%, while Telecom Index gained 0.4%. Bankex surged 0.3%, and FMCG sector added 0.2%. On the other side, Utilities Index declined 1.3%, Power sector slipped 1.2%, while IT sector fell 1.1%, and Tech Index ended 0.8% down. The overall breadth of the BSE trade was negative as shares of 1,679 companies gained, while 1,780 fell. Shares of 125 companies remained unchanged.
और घरेलू शेयर बाजारों के आज के कारोबार पर बात करने के लिए हमारे साथ ऑनलाइन इस समय जुड़ गए हैं आर्थिक विशेषज्ञ पुनीत जैन। पुनीत जैन जी, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत।
धन्यवाद।
A warm welcome.
सबसे पहले यही जानना चाहेंगे कि 2 दिन हम देख रहे हैं, 2 कारोबारी सत्रों में लगातार गिरावट है। हालांकि गिरावट बहुत ज्यादा नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी एक जो मार्केट ने जो तेजी पकड़ी थी, अब उस पर थोड़ी सी एक रोक तो लगी है, एक विराम तो लगा है। क्या इसके पीछे आप जो अमेरिकी फेडरल बैंक ने जो 75 आधार अंकों की वृद्धि का जो फैसला किया है ब्याज दरों में, उसका असर मान रहे हैं, या इसके अलावा भी और कोई आप कारक मानते हैं इसके पीछे?
नहीं, आपने सही कहा कि जो मुख्य कारण है बाजार में थोड़ी वीकनेस का भारतीय बाजारों में, वो यूएस फेड ने जो 75 बेसिस पॉइंट रेट बढ़ाया था, और कुछ हद तक जो आज रिजर्व बैंक ऑफ इंडिया की एमपीसी की मीटिंग थी, इन्फ्लेशन की कारणों पर जो डिस्कशन था, कोई मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी में कोई चेंज नहीं कर रहे वो, लेकिन जो डिस्कशन था उसको लेकर तो बाजार में थोड़ी नर्वसनेस थी कि कोई एडवर्स कोई स्टेप रिजर्व बैंक से ना आए। तो कुल मिलाकर बाजार में हल्की, मैं कहूंगा कि वीकनेस थी। फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स, हालांकि बहुत बड़ी बात है कि फॉरेन इन्वेस्टर्स भारत में अभी भी बाइंग कर रहे हैं पिछले कुछ दिनों से, पर कुल मिलाकर प्रॉफिट बुकिंग भी रही, थोड़ा कॉशियस अप्रोच रहा, और तभी आपने जो कहा कि मामूली गिरावट पिछले 2 दिनों से बाजार में रही है, उसका मुख्य कारण वही है।
So, Puneet, the Fed raises another 75 basis point, BPS, signals further action, and Nasdaq was down 3%. But in all this, Nifty almost back in the green. This is some crazy relative strength going for it.
So, definitely it's a relative strength which is in India, which actually has persisted for many weeks now. And we have seen that despite the fact that European markets and American markets doing quite badly in face of aggressive monetary actions by the central banks, somehow Indian markets have done very well, largely because of very good participation by retail investors. We have seen strong inflows into mutual funds, domestic investors buying constantly into equity markets. So that has been one strength. Secondly, and again, I would say, which is very, very strange, is the fact that the foreign investors have been buyers in India in the last few days. Whereas there have been sellers, we know that they have been selling very heavily in China particularly. China has seen very strong foreign outflows, very big buying, selling there. In spite of that, I think Indian domestic investors and the strength of the Indian economy, they are the reasons that we have been outperforming.
So you're very right in saying that the FIIs have been pretty active in the Indian market. In fact, they have bought equities worth 12,610 crores in the Indian markets. So does it mean that they have reposed their faith in the Indian market even when the market was going through a bad phase?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there is any doubt now that Indian economy is being acknowledged as one of the robust economies of the world, one of the robust large economies of the world, even when there are other challenges, for the other countries. In fact, one of the very famous fund managers, he very recently said that India is behaving like a large stock among the indices, among the world indices. So it's like as if it is a economy which is standing up right of various global causes of concern. So definitely the fact that Indian economy is growing in a robust manner, we don't have an inflation scare unlike most countries. We have high inflation, but it's not very high inflation and not disrupting economic growth. So the fact that we have such phenomenal performance by economic indicators is one of the chief reasons why there is this confidence.
Okay, do you think that the Nifty is tracking Dow futures now? The key takeaway from the Powell's press conference is that he's trying to control inflation, but avert any kind of, recessionary situation. The U.S. economy is also, according to him, doing pretty well. Back home, the dynamics of the Indian economy are also pretty strong. Given all these factors, the market is trying to remain in the positive territory going forward.
So yesterday was a very interesting day for U.S. markets. In fact, they start somewhat lower. When the interest rate decision came, they actually shot up for a brief period by almost 1%. And then after the Fed chairman's press conference, we saw a very sharp fall. And today also, the Dow futures are actually down Right now, they're down by about 450 points. So clearly, the U.S. are reeling under this onslaught by the U.S. Fed, which is what probably they want. They want the economy to come down a little bit. But Indian markets, again, like I said, they're not tracking U.S. Markets. It does affect sentiment. Honestly, the U.S. market is one of the is the world's largest economy market. It has a market capitalization of more than $20 trillion. By comparison, we are just a $3 trillion market. So they're 7-8 times bigger than we are. So definitely, it is the big brother. It is the elephant in the room, so to say. But in spite of it, I think, and particularly because of that, I think the outperformance of Indian markets is very notable.
जी पुनीत जी, अगर अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तर पर हम देखें अर्थव्यवस्थाओं पे जो दबाव दिख रहा है, उसका एक तुलना अगर हम भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था से करें और जिस तरीके से क्रेडिट ग्रोथ को हम अगर देखें और कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर को देखें और ऑटो सेल्स के जो पॉइंटर्स आ रहे हैं, वो एक बहुत मजबूत अर्थव्यवस्था की तरफ इशारा करते हैं, तो आपको लगता है कि हमारी जो बाजार की जो दिशा है वो आगे और अभी तेजी का उसमें वो रहेगा, हमें देखने को मिलेगी?
जी हाँ, मैं काफी पर्सनली अगर आप मुझसे पूछे तो मैं बहुत ऑप्टिमिस्टिक हूँ कि आने वाले समय में हमारी जो अर्थव्यवस्था का प्रदर्शन है वो और बेहतर होगा। देखिए, कुछ बहुत खास इंडिकेटर होते हैं इकोनॉमिक स्ट्रेंथ के। सबसे महत्वपूर्ण आपने इसको मेंशन किया, जो क्रेडिट ग्रोथ है। देखिए, कई वर्षों से जिस दौरान हमने देखा सॉफ्ट इकोनॉमी में, तो क्रेडिट ग्रोथ 2%, 3% या 4% होती थी। इस वक्त क्रेडिट ग्रोथ, जो लेटेस्ट डेटा है आरबीआई का, वो बता रहा है कि 16 से 17% क्रेडिट ग्रोथ ईयर ऑन ईयर बेसिस पे इस वक्त है। यानी बैंकिंग क्षेत्र से जो क्रेडिट दिया जा रहा है वो इतनी तेजी से बढ़ रहा है, और ये तभी होगा जब जो इकोनॉमी में डिमांड है क्रेडिट की। और उसके जो ब्रेकअप को अगर हम देखें तो इंटरेस्टिंग चीज ये है कि वो करीब इक्वल मेजर में मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर, इंडस्ट्रियल सेक्टर को भी क्रेडिट ग्रोथ है, सर्विसेज सेक्टर में भी हम देख रहे हैं क्रेडिट ग्रोथ है। तो क्लियरली जो इकोनॉमी के सारे हिस्से हैं, चाहे मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हो, चाहे सर्विसेज हो, चाहे दूसरे हिस्से हो, वो सभी जो हिस्से हैं वो इक्वल मात्रा में, और जो पर्टिकुलरली जो मीडियम एंड स्मॉल एंटरप्राइजेज है, ये एक रिमार्केबल चीज है। नॉर्मली हम देखते थे कि जो बड़ी कंपनियां हैं वहां क्रेडिट ग्रोथ रहती थी, वहां ग्रोथ होती थी, लेकिन पिछड़ जाती थी छोटी कंपनियां। अभी फिलहाल जो हमारे सामने आंकड़े हैं वो बता रही हैं कि स्मॉल एंड मीडियम कंपनीज भी अच्छा प्रदर्शन कर रही है, वहां भी क्रेडिट ग्रोथ स्ट्रॉन्ग है। मुझे लगता है काफी बड़ी उपलब्धि है। जी,
आपने छोटी और मझोली कंपनियों की बात करी। आज हम देख रहे हैं मिड कैप और स्मॉल कैप दोनों में ही बढ़ोतरी देखने को मिली है। 0.22% और 0.11% की खरीदारी हुई है आज मिड कैप और स्मॉल कैप में। कैसा देखते हैं अगले आने वाले सप्ताहों में मिड कैप और स्मॉल कैप सेगमेंट को आप?
देखिए, ये बहुत एक इंटरेस्टिंग हमने एक ट्रेंड देखा है कि नॉर्मली जब पहले बाजारों में रैली आती थी तो लार्ज कैप स्टॉक्स या जो इंडेक्स में जो बड़े स्टॉक्स हैं, टॉप की 100 कंपनीज हैं, उनके शेयर्स में तो हम देखते थे तेजी चलती थी, लेकिन छोटी कंपनियां जो हैं उसमें, या मिड कैप्स स्मॉल कैप्स, उसमें नॉर्मली उसमें हम बहुत बड़ा बाइंग नहीं देखते थे, लिक्विडिटी भी कम रहती थी। अच्छी बात यह है कि अब की बार हमने देखा पिछले एक वर्ष में जो स्मॉल एंड मिड कैप कंपनीज है वहां पर काफी प्रदर्शन रहा है, और जो रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स हैं उन्होंने बहुत पार्टिसिपेट किया है। पहले रिटेल इन्वेस्टर्स सिर्फ लार्ज कैप्स में थ्रू म्यूचुअल फंड इन्वेस्ट करते थे, तो मुझे लगता है जो स्मॉल कंपनीज हैं वहां पर एक तो उनका प्रदर्शन अच्छा है। इसका एक और बड़ा अच्छा इंडिकेटर है, हम जब अभी आंकड़े देख रहे थे कि जो स्मॉल एंड मीडियम एंटरप्राइजेस का एक्सचेंज है, एसएमई एक्सचेंज जिसे हम कहते हैं, वहां पर काफी बड़े पैमाने पर आईपीओज आ रहे हैं। इस साल मेरे ख्याल से 60 से 70 आईपीओज स्मॉल एंड मीडियम कंपनीज के आएंगे, तो आप इससे अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं कि जो एसएमई सेक्टर है उसको भी इस रैली का काफी फायदा हो रहा है।
Puneet, what do you take on the September quarter results which have come so far? Do you have more downgrades than we had some downgrades than upgrades in the forthcoming quarters?
So, if you really, it has been a very mixed quarter, I would say. Mixed quarter in the sense that some sectors have done a very good job. Some sectors have not done so well. Largely, if you look at the commodities-based sectors, for example, steel, cement, chemicals, these sectors have not done very well. We know that, anecdotally, we know that the prices of commodities have come down quite substantially in the last 3-4 months, and that is why particularly we saw these companies doing badly. The companies did not do well because high inflation again curbed consumption by retail consumers. But some of the other sectors like banking we have seen has done very well. In fact, they have exceeded all expectations. We have seen pharma companies do very well, and surprisingly, IT companies, the numbers also pretty okay. In fact, we were expecting great underperformance by IT companies, but Indian IT services companies have done very well. So it has been a mixed bag. If you look at the overall numbers, I think overall numbers are better than what we expected. Overall growth in net profit is about 5%. We were probably expecting a sharp or a slight fall in overall profits. But so far, if you look at automobile companies' numbers and IT and banking, I think overall we have done better than expected.
Okay, Puneet, the rupee has been all over the place. Before I go further, 1.4% increase in dollar strength has been noted today, and the dollar index is at 112.9. So in this scenario, a lot has been said about depreciation and appreciation. Where do you see the currency headed? And does it also mean that the firms with high dollar debt will be under pressure going forward?
So you really asked me a difficult question. Dollar in this environment is so difficult. It's been very volatile. In fact, the dollar index was 115 just a few days back. Then it fell from 115 to 110 a couple of days back. It is back to at 113 again. So it's really volatile. Again, I would say, in comparison, if you look at currencies like the euro, Japanese yen, and pound, these are considered to be very strong, hard currencies. These have in fact weakened a lot compared to dollar, in comparison to the rupee. I think again we have done surprisingly well. In fact, whenever in the US Fed they raise interest rates, typically the US dollar goes up, because usually what happens if for example, you'll be surprised. Recently, the US Treasury came out with inflation protected securities, which is typically called TAPES in America, and the interest rate was 9%. Can you imagine 9% bonds being issued by Treasury in America? And there was a demand for billions of dollars. So clearly what happened was that the investors, they take out money from other markets and they take it to US and investing in these bonds, particularly the inflation protected, because inflation is 8.6%. So they mark it up a bit and they're selling at 9%. So of course, if interest rates are high, inflation is high in USA, we will see currencies in other parts of the world fall. I think we'll need to wait for inflation to come down in USA to see other currencies stabilize. But however, I don't think that's happening in the next few months, but hopefully next year we should see inflation come down, we should see the dollar index come down a little bit, and then probably we'll stabilize.
So what about the valuations? How would you rate India now versus the rest of the world?
See, interestingly, if you look at the valuation, then Indian stocks are considered to be overvalued. In fact, recently, a very large fund house in USA, they said that Indian stocks are overvalued, Chinese stocks are undervalued, and they made a higher allocation for China. And after that, the Chinese stocks fell by 15%. So clearly, they realized their mistake. And they said that, okay, we made a mistake and we should probably reallocate capital to India, because India, definitely, valuation-wise, we are a bit higher. Valuation is because of the growth and the stability that we have in India. So now, valuation-wise, we are definitely, relatively, we are overvalued vis-a-vis the world. But I think in terms of stability and growth prospects, इंडिया इज अ बेटर बेट।
जी पुनीत जी, शॉर्ट टर्म में घरेलू बाजारों की दिशा क्या रहने वाली है और कौन से ऐसे सेक्टर्स हैं जिन पर आप फोकस करना चाहेंगे?
देखिए, मेरा पर्सनल, बाजार के बारे में कुछ भी कहना हमेशा बहुत मुश्किल चीज रहती है, और मैं सभी इन्वेस्टर्स को ये देना चाहूंगा कि वो लॉन्ग टर्म के लिए इन्वेस्ट करें, स्पेकुलेशन ना करें और धीरे धीरे इन्वेस्टमेंट करें। सिस्टमेटिकली जिसे कहते हैं हम इन्वेस्ट करना चाहिए, मुझे लगता है। लेकिन मेरी पर्सनल राय ये है कि आने वाले टाइम में भारतीय अर्थव्यवस्था भी और भारतीय स्टॉक मार्केट भी बहुत अच्छा करने वाली है। मुझे लगता है एक हिस्टोरिक मौका है मार्केट्स में इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए, क्योंकि बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग हमारी परफॉर्मेंस है। जो मुझे अच्छे लगते हैं उसमें मैं फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर, पर्टिकुलरली जो गवर्नमेंट ओन्ड बैंक्स हैं, पीएसयू बैंक जिसे हम कहते हैं, गवर्नमेंट सेक्टर बैंक्स मुझे बहुत अच्छे लगते हैं। मुझे डिफेंस सेक्टर से जो रिलेटेड इंडस्ट्रीज हैं, यदि हम हिंदुस्तान एरोनॉटिक्स की बात करें, कमाल का प्रदर्शन है। आप हैरान होंगे जो गवर्नमेंट पीएसयू ओन्ड डिफेंस एंटरप्राइजेज हैं, चाहे मिसाइल बनाती है भारत डायनामिक्स या हवाई जहाज बनाती है हिंदुस्तान एरोनॉटिक्स, बहुत बड़ा पद, बहुत मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है। और तीसरा सेक्टर मुझे जो लगता है ग्रोथ आएगी वहाँ रियल एस्टेट में। तो मुझे लगता है फाइनेंशियल सेक्टर, पर्टिकुलरली PSU बैंक्स, PSU डिफेंस एस्टैब्लिशमेंट जो कंपनीज है, और रियल एस्टेट, ये मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगता है।
I'm just going back to yesterday, Puneet, where Governor Shaktikant Das at a banking summit said that he sounded very hawkish on the inflation front, which is in contrast to the dovish remarks by some of the external members of the MPC. So what do you think is on the anvil in the coming month?
See, interestingly, inflation is not such a big challenge because we are at 6.7%. We expect inflation to trend down to below 6% in the next few months. So I don't think RBI's immediate excessive concern is inflation. But what is happening is that worldwide, because all the central banks are increasing their interest rates, so there's a global inflation, the currencies can be destabilized. So I think the Reserve Bank of India will be forced to raise rates in response to what other central banks are doing. See, if we don't do that, suppose USA is raising rates and India does not raise rates, then the domestic currency depreciates. So the explanation I gave earlier, then the money will go out of India because they will chase higher interest rates in other. So the RBI, I don't think is so much on the inflation front, and therefore raising rates in response to inflation. They are raising rates mostly in response to what global banks are doing, and I increase in interest will be moderate in India, and they may not be very aggressive in the next meeting.
Okay, just one last question related to the markets. We have managed to hit 60K on Sensex and 18,000 on the Nifty. Do you think that the worst is now priced in terms of geopolitical concerns, rate hikes, inflation, etc.?
It's very difficult to forecast. See, geopolitics is a big concern. If you really ask me, I would have said markets are going to be very good. Just don't worry anything. It's all Goldilocks. Let's go and invest everything we have. I think geopolitics is the biggest threat to this market. How the European war pans out, what happens in other parts of the country, or in Europe, what Asia, because China is pressing a lot on geopolitics. So I think geopolitics continues to be the real concern in this situation. Having said, I would say that it is that one should invest systematically in this market. So even if there is some concern, then we can be prepared. Economically, if you ask me, my concern is not so overblown. I'm really worried about geopolitics and this situation stabilizing rather than blow out in some area.
जी, अब घरेलू शेयर बाजारों के बाद बढ़ते हैं वैश्विक शेयर बाजार की ओर। अमेरिकी शेयर बाजारों में गिरावट के साथ एशियाई शेयर बाजार भी आज नुकसान में रहे। हांगकांग का हैंग सेंग 3.1% टूट गया। सिंगापुर का स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स 1.2% की गिरावट में रहा। दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी 0.3% और चीन का शांघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स 0.2% के नुकसान के साथ बंद हुए। अवकाश के कारण जापान के निकेई में आज कारोबार नहीं हुआ। यूरोपीय शेयर बाजारों में भी अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार के दौरान गिरावट का रुख था। समाचार लिखे जाने तक जर्मनी का डैक्स 1.1%, फ्रांस का कैक 0.8% और लंदन का FTSE 100 0.7% के नुकसान के साथ कारोबार कर रहे थे।
The US stocks ended sharply lower yesterday as comments from Fed Chair Jeremy Powell dampened investor sentiment. He said that it was very premature to be thinking about pausing rate hikes. Earlier, investors had been widely anticipating a 75 basis point rate hike in the hope that the Fed will downsize the rate hikes at its December meeting. The Dow Jones Industrial Average Index slipped 1.6%, the S&P 500 fell 2.5%, and the Nasdaq Composite declined 3.4%. Puneet, how hopeful are you of the downsize of the rate hikes in the December meeting?
So, interestingly, the Fed chairman issued a 1-2 punch to the market yesterday. So he gave one positive news saying that, look, we are looking to slow down the pace of hikes either in the next meeting or the meeting after that. So
Yes.
clearly they're going to reduce the pace to 50 basis points either in December or in February when they meet, in January and in February. But at the same time, he said that we will raise rates higher. That is, earlier the peak was expected to be 4.6%. This time he said that we might go higher than 5%. And he said that we will go there and we will stay there longer. So it is higher and longer, which is really gave the market a kind of a shock. And we saw the Dow Jones collapse. So I think we will see the pace of the rate hikes going down a little bit, but probably they will stay at a higher rate for much longer than what the market expected.
So in the given scenario, as you have mentioned, what role would be the FPIs be playing in India?
So what we have seen is that FPIs are pulling out money from stock markets worldwide. You just mentioned that virtually across the world, markets are down by 1% plus. Fortunately, in India, I think, and it usually happens many times, that whenever they are pulling money out from across the world, they will look at markets which are promising growth, which are promising appreciation capital. My hope is that India will offer that island of calm and island of growth to these FIIs. And therefore, we see continuing buying by FIIs, FPIs. My expectation is that they will continue to be buyers in India rather than sellers, unlike other countries in the world.
Okay, moving on, the oil prices today fell around 1% as the dollar firmed on the Federal Reserve's hawkish stance. On the other hand, concerns over looming supply risks capped the fall in prices. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading at $95.30 per barrel, while WTI crude prices were at $89 per barrel. Where do you see the oil going, Puneet? $95, there was a time at 100 we all were fretting. Do we still need to fret over the $95.30 per barrel trade?
So $95 is still high, not beyond our comfort. But I must tell you that 95 is not as high as, or high enough to make it very uncomfortable for us. In fact, when the finance minister had come out with the budget speech earlier this year, even at that time, the oil price was about $95 per barrel. So I think it was priced into our budget estimates. And therefore, that is one comfort. Yesterday, of course, prices rose a little bit because the U.S. stockpiles of oil, they have dropped because USA is releasing crude oil from their strapped reserves, and that's drawing down their oil stocks. That is putting some pressure on the oil prices. But again, oil, honestly, is a very geopolitical commodity. It is not reacting to fundamentals.
So is there a case for the shale gas also to come out?
The shale gas production has been very strong in USA. In fact, US has now become the largest producer of oil in the world. It is just that they're not exporting enough of it. But I think shale will increase not only in USA. In fact, there's a great demand that shale should be extracted even in UK, which has a large...
Okay.
But yes, it will definitely go up.
मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज पर सोने का दिसंबर वायदा कीमतें आज 535 रुपए गिरकर 50,070 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम पर चल रही थीं। दिसंबर अनुबंध वाली चांदी भी 1,515 रुपए टूटकर 57,275 रुपए प्रति किलोग्राम के स्तर पर कारोबार कर रही थी। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय बाजार में न्यूयॉर्क मर्केंटाइल एक्सचेंज में सोना मंदी के साथ $1,620.30 प्रति औंस, जबकि चांदी $18.90 प्रति औंस पर कारोबार कर रही थी। बहुत संक्षेप में जानना चाहेंगे पुनीत जी आपसे, फेड रेट हाइक का क्या असर सोने पर पड़ेगा? सोने की कीमतों पर क्या सोने में चमक बढ़ेगी?
नहीं, देखिए, जब भी फेड इंटरेस्ट रेट हाइक करता है और डॉलर की कीमतें बढ़ती हैं तो गोल्ड में कमी आती है। वो रिवर्स चलता है गोल्ड जी। देख रहे हैं कि आज भी गोल्ड जो है वो $25-26 नीचे है, तो डेफिनेटली अभी नीचे रहेगा जब तक गोल्ड के इंडेक्स ऊपर है।
राजीव नागपाल जी कार्यक्रम में शामिल होने और पुनीत जैन जी कार्यक्रम में शामिल होने और चर्चा के लिए आपका धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Puneet, for being with us. And before we close the headlines once again, domestic indices log marginal losses. Sensex closes below the 60,900 level. Nifty settles below 18,100 points. Asian share markets decline, falling losses in the US stocks, and Brent crude prices hover around $95 per barrel. That's all we have in this edition of Market Mantra. Till tomorrow, goodbye.
Market Mantra.